I've always believed pixel art is one of the most beautiful styles in gaming, carrying a unique charm that never fades, and when it comes to 2D RPGs, this style reaches its peak, turning entire adventures into pure visual magic. Today, I'm bringing you 12 2D RPGs that are true works of art, combining beauty, depth, and unforgettable design. Back on the original PlayStation, most RPG fans were drawn to big names like Final Fantasy VII or Suikoden. Hidden among those giants, though, was Beyond the Beyond, a game that never became a hit but still carried a unique charm for those who discovered it. With its traditional turn-based battles, colorful presentation, and early PS1 nostalgia, it stood out as a curious bridge between the 16-bit era and the new wave of 3D. The story sets up a classic clash between light and darkness. It doesn't try to reinvent the genre, but its simplicity is part of the appeal. Straightforward exploration, dungeons with puzzles, and a steady rhythm of progression that feels familiar in the best way. Instead of overwhelming you with complex systems, it delivers that pure RPG experience that makes you settle in for the adventure. Combat includes a neat twist. Beyond the usual attack and magic commands, the game experimented with a timing mechanic where button presses could influence the effectiveness of moves. It's a small detail, but it made battles feel more interactive, a sign of how developers were starting to toy with traditional formulas in the mid-90s. Visually, it clings to the pixel art spirit even as the PlayStation was rushing into 3D. Character sprites are expressive, environments have color and warmth, and the animations give it that distinct retro feel. Add a soundtrack that swings between energetic and atmospheric, and you've got a package that screams 90s RPG nostalgia. I know it's not the most praised game of its time, but I have a soft spot for Beyond the Beyond. There's something about its straightforward style, its rough edges, and its old-school charm that I really enjoy. It may not be a legendary classic, but for me it's one of those titles that show exactly why 2D RPGs on the PlayStation still deserve love. Terra Memoria is a recent indie RPG that stands out for its cozy charm and stunning HD 2D visuals. Released in 2024, it mixes classic turn-based battles with exploration, crafting, and character interactions, offering a lighter, more welcoming approach than most modern JRPGs. The story follows a small group of adventurers on a journey across a land shaped by magic and tradition. Instead of a grand, world-ending threat, the narrative focuses on discovery and bonds between characters. This grounded tone gives the game personality and makes the world feel alive in smaller, meaningful ways. Combat uses a traditional turn-based system that's approachable but still strategic. You'll manage skills, spells, and positioning while enemies keep things engaging without ever becoming exhausting. It's designed to flow smoothly, balancing relaxation with a sense of accomplishment after tougher fights. Beyond battles, Terra Memoria emphasizes slice-of-life mechanics. Cooking, crafting, and talking to townsfolk are key parts of the rhythm, giving breaks between quests and creating a cozy loop that keeps you invested without pressure. The pixel art style is gorgeous, with colorful lighting effects adding depth to towns, forests, and dungeons while keeping a nostalgic vibe. Its soundtrack, soft and melodic, completes the atmosphere, making every scene feel warm and inviting. In the end, Terra Memoria proves that RPGs don't always need to be massive or dramatic to leave an impact. Its blend of adventure, comfort, and artistry makes it one of the most unique and memorable indie releases of recent years. On the PlayStation, Eternal Eyes stood out as one of those lesser-known tactical RPGs that dared to do things differently. Instead of relying only on classic grid-based battles, it introduced a creature-raising system where magical jewels could be transformed into companions that fought at your side. This mix of strategy and monster evolution gave the game a unique flavor and set it apart within the console's vast RPG library. The story centers on Luke, a young orphan who inherits the mysterious power of the Eternal Eyes. While the narrative isn't groundbreaking, it carries a light, fairy tale charm that makes it approachable and easy to follow. It doesn't drown you in lore or complex political intrigue. Instead, it gives you a straightforward adventure where destiny, friendship, and magic intertwine. Combat unfolds on grid-based maps, rewarding careful positioning and turn order strategy. What truly sets it apart, though, is the crystal system. Instead of focusing only on human party members, you collect mystical crystals that hatch into creatures with unique abilities and growth paths. Training and evolving these monsters adds a personal layer to the gameplay, making your army feel truly your own. Visually, Eternal Eyes doesn't aim for realism or flash. Its colorful, almost toy-like art style feels more storybook than cinematic, which matches its lighter tone. The soundtrack leans into this mood as well, offering upbeat melodies with just enough drama to highlight key moments. While it never gained the recognition of its tactical RPG peers, Eternal Eyes still stands as an overlooked experiment that blended monster evolution with strategy in a way few games attempted at the time. For players who enjoy digging into forgotten corners of the PS1's RPG library, it remains a charming and unique discovery. Wandering Sword is a modern indie RPG that mixes classic pixel art with the spirit of Chinese wuxia tales. Released in 2023, it caught attention for blending martial arts fantasy with both turn-based and tactical combat, creating something fresh while still rooted in RPG tradition. The story follows a young swordsman who survives an ambush and is drawn into rivalries between sects, ancient conspiracies, and moral choices. It's steeped in themes of loyalty, betrayal, and honor, hallmarks of wuxia, but presented in a way that feels accessible to RPG fans used to more traditional fantasy settings. Combat is its biggest strength. Battles play out on tactical grids, rewarding positioning and careful planning, but you can also switch to an active mode for a faster, more dynamic feel. This flexibility keeps the system engaging for both strategy lovers and players who prefer quick action. Progression also leans into martial arts ideas. Instead of just leveling up, you cultivate energy, learn sect techniques, and master new skills that shape your playstyle. A branching morality system adds weight, letting choices influence not only your character's path, but also alliances and outcomes. Visually, the game uses a beautiful HD 2D style. Pixel characters move across detailed backdrops with depth and lighting effects that make towns, mountains, and temples come alive. The soundtrack, inspired by traditional Chinese instruments, reinforces the atmosphere perfectly. By blending wuxia storytelling with flexible combat and striking visuals, Wandering Sword shows how 2D RPGs can still evolve. It's not just retro nostalgia, it's a modern reimagining of pixel art adventure. At first glance, Secret of Evermore looks like another 16-bit fantasy RPG, but a closer look reveals something very different. Released in 1995 on the Super Nintendo, it was the only Square RPG of that era developed entirely in the United States. That alone gave it a distinct flavor, with ideas and humor that stood apart from the studio's Japanese classics. The adventure begins with a boy and his dog accidentally transported to a world stitched together from multiple eras. One moment you're wandering through prehistoric jungles, the next exploring medieval castles or futuristic laboratories. Each area feels fresh, and the dog's transformations, from a beastly wolf to a mechanical hound, add both personality and gameplay variety. Combat takes cues from Secret of Mana, but experiments with its own systems. Attacks rely on a stamina gauge, and instead of traditional magic, you use an alchemy system. By gathering ingredients, players can mix spells with different effects, making exploration directly tied to progression. It's unconventional, sometimes rough around the edges, but it rewards curiosity and experimentation. Visually, the game delivers detailed pixel art with unique environments that highlight each time period. The soundtrack goes in a bold direction too, focusing on atmospheric, almost haunting tracks rather than grand melodies. Paired with playful writing full of B-movie references, it strikes a quirky balance of mystery and humor. Even if it never became a household name, Secret of Evermore stands as one of the most unusual RPGs on the Super Nintendo. It may not have reached legendary status, but its originality, humor, and experimental systems make it a title that still deserves attention from anyone exploring the console's deep library. Back in the 90s, many RPGs stuck firmly to swords and sorcery, but one series dared to mix medieval fantasy with outer space adventure. That bold experiment began with Star Ocean, a game that never made it outside Japan until years later. Thanks to its PSP remake and the remastered First Departure, players worldwide finally got to see how this saga began. The story centers on Roddick, a young swordsman from the planet Roke whose life changes when a mysterious plague starts spreading. What begins as a local crisis quickly expands into an interstellar journey, weaving together themes of honor, survival, and cosmic discovery. This unusual blend of science fiction and traditional fantasy gave the game a personality few others at the time could match. Combat stood out just as much as the setting. Instead of relying on turn-based systems, battles happened in real time, letting players move freely, strike directly, and command allies mid-fight. It was a daring step for the mid-90s, and it laid the foundation for the series' signature style. First Departure polished this formula, adding smoother pacing and modern improvements while keeping the original's energy intact. The remaster also elevated the presentation. Characters received redrawn portraits, environments became sharper, and new voice acting, plus a refreshed soundtrack added cinematic flair. These changes helped modern players connect with the story in ways the 16-bit original never could. In the end, First Departure isn't just a look back, it's proof of how ambitious the series was right from the start. It remains a vital entry for anyone curious about how Star Ocean carved its place among Square Enix's most distinctive RPG franchises. Blending monster collecting with a side-scrolling Metroidvania, Monster Sanctuary stands out as one of the most creative indie RPGs of recent years. Instead of choosing between exploration or turn-based strategy, it merges both into a single adventure, letting you battle, train, and discover new paths with the creatures you raise. The premise is simple, yet engaging. You play as a keeper, a descendant of a long line tasked with maintaining balance between humans and monsters. Along the way, you collect eggs, hatch creatures, and form teams to fight in turn-based battles. Each monster has unique skills, synergies, and evolutions, encouraging experimentation and smart combinations rather than relying on just raw power. What really makes the game shine is how monsters are tied to exploration. They're not only fighters, but also tools for traversal. A bird might help you glide across gaps, while a slime can break through walls. This system keeps the world interconnected, rewarding curiosity and giving each new companion a sense of purpose beyond combat. The battle system itself is deep without being overwhelming. Instead of random encounters, fights are deliberate, with mechanics built around chaining skills and maximizing efficiency. Because battles score you on performance, there's a constant incentive to improve strategies, making even smaller fights rewarding. Pixel art visuals bring warmth and charm, while the soundtrack captures both the serenity of exploration and the tension of battle. It feels nostalgic, but also modern enough to keep players hooked for hours. By combining monster collecting, tactical combat, and Metroidvania exploration, Monster Sanctuary proves that familiar ideas can feel brand new when fused together. It's a game that scratches multiple RPG cravings at once, and that's exactly why it's so addictive. Few RPGs from the 16-bit era carried as much weight as Phantasy Star 4. Released in 1993 for the Sega Mega Drive, it wasn't just another chapter in the series. It was the grand finale of a saga that had helped define Sega's role in RPG history. By the time this game arrived, players knew they were experiencing something that aimed to tie together years of storytelling with a sense of closure. The narrative follows Chaz Ashley, a young hunter who begins under the guidance of his mentor Alice, but soon finds himself leading a party against a reawakening cosmic evil on the planet Motavia. What set it apart was the way it mixed intimate character arcs with themes of fate, sacrifice, and galactic conflict. Shocking twists and emotional moments gave the story a depth that was ahead of its time. Combat stuck to turn-based traditions, but added innovations that made it stand out. Macros allowed entire strategies to be preset for the party, streamlining fights without removing tactical choices. Combination attacks added variety and surprise, rewarding players for experimenting with different skill pairings. The result was a system that felt both accessible and layered. Presentation was equally impressive. Dialogue scenes featured detailed portraits that added gravity to conversations, while manga-style cutscenes pushed the Mega Drive to deliver moments that felt almost cinematic. Combined with its colorful sci-fi setting, the game stood apart from the medieval fantasy worlds dominating the era. To this day, Phantasy Star 4 is remembered as one of Sega's finest RPGs. It closed out the series with confidence, blending story, mechanics, and atmosphere into an experience that still feels influential decades later. RPGs are often about saving kingdoms, defeating gods, or uncovering cosmic secrets, but this one flips the script completely. Instead of a grand battlefield, the story drops you into the harsh reality of prison life, where survival is the real quest. That's the hook of Back to the Dawn, a game that transforms confinement into one of the most tense and intriguing RPG experiences in years. You play as a journalist thrown behind bars, forced to navigate a prison run by anthropomorphic animals. Factions battle for control, guards keep a watchful eye, and every inmate has their own motives. Trust the wrong person and you might pay dearly. Forge the right alliance and doors, literal and figurative, begin to open. The branching narrative ensures that no two runs feel the same, with multiple paths to survival or escape. Mechanically, it blends classic role-playing game progression with simulation elements. You train skills, manage resources, and decide whether to rely on strength, charm, or cunning to move forward. Turn-based combat adds an extra layer, emphasizing strategy over brute force, but violence is rarely the only option. Stealth and negotiation often provide equally viable routes, rewarding creativity in how you handle each challenge. Pixel art visuals keep the world approachable without losing its grit, contrasting the colorful characters with the unforgiving environment. The soundtrack follows suit, switching from tense beats during confrontations to quieter, reflective tracks when you're exploring or planning. Instead of castles or galaxies, Back to the Dawn makes a single prison feel like an entire world. Its mix of survival, roleplay freedom, and sharp atmosphere proves that RPGs don't need epic scale to deliver unforgettable adventures. There's a special kind of magic when a modern indie feels like it could have lived on a Super Nintendo cartridge. That's exactly the vibe here. A mix of lighthearted storytelling, colorful worlds, and fast, responsive combat that instantly calls back to the golden age of 16-bit RPGs while still adding its own twists. Instead of going for an overly serious plot, the narrative plays with RPG cliches in a tongue-in-cheek way, balancing humor with genuine adventure. You take the role of a young recruit joining the Collectors Guild, an organization devoted to exploring the world and uncovering rare treasures. The setup keeps the tone fun without losing the sense of discovery that drives the journey forward. Gameplay leans heavily into action, RPG roots. Every attack and dodge feels precise, and the skill system lets you tailor your playstyle however you like. Want to specialize in fast melee combos, rain down magic from a distance, or experiment with a hybrid approach? The freedom is there, and it makes battles feel exciting instead of repetitive. Co-op elevates things even more. Up to 4 players can join locally or online, combining builds and strategies to tackle bosses, solve puzzles, and share the chaos together. It's the kind of feature that feels like a love letter to old couch co-op sessions, perfectly adapted for today. The presentation seals the charm, expressive pixel art, vibrant towns, and a soundtrack full of cheerful, adventurous melodies that tie everything together. Rather than being just another retro throwback, Secret of Grindaia shows how indie RPGs can honor the classics while creating their own lasting identity. Among the many spin-offs in the Final Fantasy franchise, Revenant Wings on the Nintendo DS is one of those titles that often gets overlooked. Released in 2007 as a direct follow-up to Final Fantasy XII, it never reached the same level of recognition as its mainline counterpart, but it carved out its own niche with a mix of RPG and real-time strategy elements rarely seen in the series. The story picks up after the events of Ivalice's main saga, following Vaan and Penelo as they stumble into a new skyfaring adventure. While the narrative doesn't carry the same weight as 12, it expands the lore of Ivalice in a lighter, more adventurous tone. It's a continuation that fans of the world can appreciate, even if it doesn't push the series forward in major ways. Gameplay shifts from turn-based battles to a system closer to real-time strategy. Players control squads of characters and summonable creatures across large maps, issuing commands in the heat of battle rather than carefully selecting turns. For some, this made the game refreshing. For others, it felt too different from what they expected of a Final Fantasy. Regardless, it was an experiment that showed the series' flexibility. Visually, it takes advantage of the DS hardware, with colorful environments and expressive sprites, keeping the charm alive even on a smaller screen. The soundtrack reuses many themes from Final Fantasy XII, reinforcing the sense of connection while giving portable players a taste of Ivalice's grandeur. Though it isn't often talked about, Revenant Wings deserves recognition as a bold spin-off that dared to try something new. It may not be remembered as one of the franchise's greats, but for those who played it, it remains a curious and charming part of Final Fantasy history. Every so often, an indie RPG comes along that feels both tiny in scale and massive in heart. Small Saga is exactly that kind of game, turning the overlooked world beneath our feet into an epic battleground of mice, squirrels, and other creatures fighting for survival and honor. It's proof that you don't need sprawling kingdoms or galaxies to tell a powerful story. Sometimes the sewers and alleys of a city are enough. You take control of Verm, a mouse warrior on a quest for revenge after a godlike figure steals his tail. What sounds quirky quickly grows into something deeper, with themes of resilience, loyalty, and sacrifice woven into a surprisingly emotional narrative. Each character you meet, whether friend or foe, has personality and purpose, making the journey feel alive despite the small setting. Combat borrows from classic turn-based JRPGs, but with streamlined systems that keep things engaging. Skills are tightly designed, enemy encounters are varied, and every fight feels purposeful rather than filler. It's the kind of battle system that respects your time while still offering tactical depth. Visually, the game is striking. Gorgeous pixel art makes every environment and character pop with detail, from the underground tunnels to the improvised weapons and armor crafted by its tiny heroes. The soundtrack amplifies the mood, mixing whimsy with drama in a way that matches the story's shifts between lighthearted and intense moments. What makes Small Saga shine is how it elevates something seemingly simple into a grand adventure. It balances humor with heartfelt storytelling, light exploration with memorable battles, and wraps it all in a world that feels both charming and epic. For fans of 2D RPGs, this is one of the freshest and most delightful experiences to come out in years. We've reached the end of our journey through 12 2D RPGs that prove why this style never loses its magic. Each one, whether a hidden gem or a legendary classic, shows the timeless beauty of pixel art and clever design. I hope you enjoyed this different list. And if you did, don't forget to subscribe, drop a like, and share which one you'd play first.